Hi, I'm artist Avon Waters and welcome to the Wet Pastelist. This channel is all about teaching folks about wet pastel techniques, basic art, composition, color theory, and anything art that can deal with soft pastels and wet pastels. For my subscribers who have been following me and people who have checked in on this channel and friends, you'll notice that my background's a little different today. I'm coming to you from my kitchen. And the reason I'm coming to you from my kitchen is I want to show you some things that you can do with failed pastels. Some things you can do in your kitchen, out in the yard with a hose, or even a pressure washer on a low nozzle setting where you don't strip paint from your deck. We all have failed pastels. Even the artists like myself and others who are in international and national shows, juried shows, and win national awards, we still have failed paintings. Albeit the number of failures I have are much less than when I first started, at some point these paintings are going to stack up. And today I'm going to show you how to repurpose and use some of those old pastels that you thought you would just have to throw away. You're going to shut this off before the end. Please hit that like button so others will at least have a chance to see and find something that helps them. Okay, so here we go. Let's get started. This is just a partial stack of some of the pastels that I pulled out of my storage space. They were at one time covered with glycine to protect them, and they just, after a number of attempts to sell, and some of them I didn't even, like this one I didn't even try to sell. This was an experiment dealing with mark making. This is one that came from a series of abstractions that I tried to create with the way that roofs and the way that buildings and the building's edges come together. We all have these plein air attempts. If you're not a plein air painter, which I am not, but I like to go out and plein air, and when I do plein air painting, most of the time whatever I select with my friends just isn't going to work out. They're just they turn out butt ugly, and sometimes I take them back and make something out of them, but there's a whole stack of these things that just do not make the cut. And so we've all got these things. This one was actually shown a number of times. I like the abstract color. So you see, we all get these things. Some of them are mounted on foam board. The different mountings, some of them are dry mounted. Most of these are using spray adhesive. And so what I'm going to show you is not anything that is going to delaminate these foam board mounted pieces. Are just plain paper, and they've been used in wet pastel techniques. You can see this is a 400 UArt and see the staining on the back. I have used this a number of times using the techniques I'm going to show you here in a minute. This one is a combination of Neo 2 pastel, which is a water-soluble pastel crayon, and regular pastel, an experiment that failed. So you can see there's all sorts of stuff here, and the goal here is to reuse as many of these supports as possible. The first thing you're going to want to do is go to the dollar store and just get you like a potato or vegetable washing brush, or one of these sponges where one side is a sponge and the other side has a tough vinyl. It looks like it's been melted by heat and still is kind of rough and will scrub Teflon pans. So that's what you want to do, is pick out your weapon of choice. I'm going to start with one of these that is basically on foam board, and it was adhered with spray adhesives, a releasable adhesive. And we don't want to use hot water because that will delaminate these quicker, but we want to just use as little water as possible in order to start the scrubbing process, and then increase it as you need it. This will make a mess, so if you're or your significant other like a really clean sink, be prepared to have to clean the kitchen after you do this. But it also works outside with a hose. I've done that before, spray them off and then sit along the side and scrub it all off. So here we go. See how that is, see how just this edge is coming off of there? Now this had a piece of, this had gesso texture on it, and you can see some of that texturing there. So I would just go along here, and you get some staining from some of the darker colors, but you can either use washes, acrylic washes, or you can live with the stain and paint over it, because our soft pastels and wet pastel techniques are opaque, so you can get rid of a lot of that. Now when they're mounted like this, they usually, sometimes after you do this several times or you use too much water, and I'm filming this, I normally wouldn't use this much water, but I'm filming with one hand, so bear with me a little bit. You'll sometimes get some delamination when you use too much water. You can see a little bit right there, but not enough that you can't stick this thing in a frame, and it will hold that side down onto its support. Now sometimes we use, in our wet pastel techniques, we use water-soluble crayons, we use mediums, and you can see that even that will spread across here. And I'm not running the water this time, I'm just using what was in the sponge. And there was a little bit of soap left in there, which surprised me, but I got to buy my wife a new sponge to do the juices tonight, so I'll end up doing them. But you can see that even the Neon 2 wet crayons came off of there, and this was painted with an acrylic. A lot of times it's either acrylic, my guess is it's acrylic, but it could have also been oil. A lot of times when I had oil painting colors left over, I would dilute them down and paint some of these panels and stain them, so that when I went out and I wasn't facing a near white surface when I went out and did plein air painting. But you can see there's some staining on there from the dark colors, but nothing you can't overcome once this dries, and you can reuse this panel over and over and over again. Now here's one that is on 400. I showed you this earlier. It's been washed off several times, and that's where the staining on the back comes from. And this has been used with a number of wet pastel techniques. It's got a lot of gesso on here. It's got a lot of raised ridges. And so I want you to see how the paper reacts. It will curl up as tight because it came off a roll of pastel paper that I bought in 53-inch roll by, I don't know, 6 or 10 yards. And so you'll see how that will curl. You can already see some of the edges curling up, and I haven't even started scrubbing, but the moisture will make it start to go back to that rolled up curl thing. So these pieces you have to treat a little bit differently, and you have to, once they are fairly dry to the touch but still have some dampness in them, you have to stick them under some weight and they'll flatten right back out again. Occasionally you'll get some rippling. If that's the case, re-wet them, stick them between a couple pieces of towel and dry them as much as possible, and then stick them under weights, and those ripples usually will come out. If not, you can cut it up and do quick little sketches and demos for studies. But most of all these materials will be reusable. And I purposely picked this one because I know that I had reused it so many times, and that I had used a number of mediums on this one. But now you can see from that first one, the first image before I added the water, see all those drips? I had used some fixatives, whether it was Spectrafix or Sennelier. I had used some fixatives on this to make some of these drips. And so this one is not going to come as clean as the others have. I am going to have some staining on this. I'll keep working on this and then show you the staining that's left. Okay, you can see from this that there's significant staining. I've scrubbed really hard on this area with this plastic sponge with the rough side, and that's about all I'm going to get out of there, because those fixatives and the solvents and acrylic mediums that I probably use for the underpainting and to destroy this and create those drips and the ghosts that I wanted to follow. There's different things that you could do. I have taken pieces like this, and this is what I'll probably do with this. I just love those ghosts that are left. I will probably, after I get this dried and stick it under some weight, I will probably reuse this, but I will take it from the ghost stages that are left. There's still a lot of texture on this that it will pick up pastel nicely. And I will probably refollow some of these ghosts and recreate something that I hope is better than what we just washed off. If not, then gee, I'll be sorry I washed it off. Not really. I really didn't like that one at all. It has to speak to my heart, otherwise I don't keep it. I'm long past the point where these things become precious. If they don't speak to me, they're history. Let's go through some of these and I'll show you some of the results. As I said, this one, one way you can reuse these when not everything comes off and you have staining because of the materials you used in the wet process. Another way that you can reuse these that are stained. See the texture that is in this? This has had a lot of application of probably gesso, maybe some gesso mixed with some acrylic gels and things to create this texture. So if you were distracted by this and you wanted something to still paint over, you could tint a little bit of clear gesso with some pigment, some acrylic pigment, or even grind up some pastel if you wanted to stay just in the pastel family, and use powdered pastels to pigment some clear gesso, and you could go over that and eliminate a lot of that. Some of these were from 7 and 8 years ago, and the older ones I wasn't using any wet techniques at all, and so they clean up really nice. So if you're not into wet pastel yet, you can see that your pieces will clean up nice. This one has been used once before and washed off once before, and you see I'm starting to get some of this rippling. I'll try to put it in a shadow. See those ripples? I can press this underneath while it's still damp, underneath some weight, and most all of that will disappear. And if it doesn't, just a little bit along the edges would, just a little bit along the edge where the frame and the plastic moldings would hit, would probably push that down and not be a concern, because there's no other bubbling anywhere else on this piece. Here's one that probably the pastel powder was on there thick, and I applied some sort of acrylic medium, and the medium really stained this. And if I wanted to use this, I can ignore this, but if it's bothersome to you, again, putting a coat of either opaque acrylic paint over this thinly would start to soften up some of those distractions. You can see there's various stages, everything from almost perfectly clean to slightly stained, and this one, I thought it was a pastel. It originally was a pastel, and I took acrylic paint and I mixed it with a pastel and created an underpainting for an acrylic painting. So I'm going to pull this one out, and I might finish this in acrylic, or because it's acrylic base, I could finish this in an oil. Here's a special case. See, as I scrubbed these places on this one, this actually pulled off some of the finish. This was an acrylic medium. This was an acrylic medium added to an underpainting with acrylic paints, and it actually pulled some of the paint off. I would want to reuse this. To do this, I would want to even up this surface, and this is a case where you could either throw it away or you could paint over it, like I said, with maybe some white gesso, and then put clear gesso even on top of that. And that, because this is really dark, so if you just tinted clear gesso, you're probably going to get a lot of distractions. So I would recommend something like this, putting white gesso over it, because it's still laminated, still a good piece of paper, and then putting your layer of clear gesso with pumice in it, and that will give you a new surface. Here's one that delaminated. If I can't pull this off of here and flatten just the paper out under weight, I'll probably throw this one away. It does happen, but hey, that's just one out of many that I did today, so the percentages are way in your favor to reuse these materials. I cannot promise that I will give you any more features from my kitchen, but if you enjoyed this, hit that like button and we'll let other people see this. And please make some comments, let us know what you want to see. If you want me back in my kitchen, I could do a little French cooking recipe after a long day in the studio, so let me know that too. So hopefully that helped you, and you can use some of this information or pass it on to your other pastel artists. And we'll be back next week with probably a wet pastel technique or something with soft pastels. All right, so long everybody. Bye-bye. Take care.